Hey guys, welcome to the What a Lad podcast. I'm James Marshall, and today I've got an episode for you around mental health. And I know after releasing the last episode with Shane Christie, I guess that just emphasised how important it is to keep talking about this topic, and had so many messages from people around wanting to hear more. So here I've got a guest who can hopefully give you some tools around some of the things that he's learned through his journey in his professional rugby career. So really looking forward to you listening to this. There's lots of good stuff in here for whether it's you or potentially friends or anyone going through something. So hope you enjoy this episode.
What a lad. Well, something I've always wanted to do with this platform is to use it to be able to help people, and I'm still getting messages from retired athletes about that Tim Bateman episode that I released. So really keen to do more episodes like that where we can get someone who has super good knowledge on some area where they can help others. And for today's episode, I have the perfect guest for the topic of mental health, and he's got plenty of tools where he can help and handle different challenges of pro sport throws at you, but not just pro sport, but life in general. He is, of course, a massive lad. He's been on What a Lad already and shared his incredible story. He is the hard man of New Zealand rugby in this country. It is, of course, the great Hugh Renton. Welcome, mate.
Cheers, Jimmy. Cheers for the intro. It's always funny to hear what you guys
I'd forgotten what I'd written there, so I was just reading that off the top. Some of it was made up, but it was good to get you on, and obviously had you on before, and it's quite cool seeing your journey where it's at now. I think, two and a bit years later, and I remember you speaking about where you wanted to get to and had a really good year on the field last year for the Highlanders and really established yourself as, you know, one of the best loose forwards in the country.
Cheers. Yeah, it's good to be here, and obviously we've talked over the years, and then a couple of years ago went on the podcast, and time goes quick, and losing my hair even quicker. So, yeah.
But I do want to get into like what you're pretty keen to come on and speak about is the mental health side of not just sport, but life in general, and something you're very passionate about. And speaking to you about it previously, I feel like what you talk about can add so much value to not just rugby players around the country or the world, but people in just general society who are going through some issues.
Totally agree. I think it's just I remember just hearing people say, you know, if you have gone through experience that might help someone who hasn't gone through it yet or might go through it, you should share it. And I guess when we had those couple of yarns, as you mentioned, I might have gone through a couple of experiences that might help people. So if I can share and give some advice and what could have helped me or helped me, then why not say it? And with that though, like I think if anyone is seriously going through something right now, seek medical professional help. Like I'm not a professional or anything like that, and I think that's your first port of call to go to a professional doctor and or psych, and get onto that really quick. But happy to share what I've gone through and have a yarn.
So let's start it. Like, where did mental health sort of all start for you and like your journey?
Good question. I think it definitely has sort of been around a little bit, and the older I've got, things that have happened in the past have sort of been brought to light, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's probably, you know, something I had then, an anxiety then, but at the time I wouldn't have even recognised it.
Yeah.
Oh, but I remember like at high school, like trying to play rugby and then getting like injuries at school, and then sort of would freak out about being able to get back on the rugby field, or be super anxious about performing well or something like that when I was sort of, you know, under 16 sort of side of things, and then potentially like didn't perform well and then got dropped from Hawke's Bay under 14s at that time, and then sort of freaked out about my rugby career being finished and all that sort of stuff. So I mean, like all the way back to then, you know, I can remember little bits, and as you get older you sort of recognise, oh, that's why I reacted then, or this is why I reacted then. And so I think that's been Probably the most exciting part of this whole journey is actually recognizing the patterns within my history or myself, and then just recognizing that, and then having better systems in place for future events, really. And it's not always been easy, and I haven't even for a long time there known how to handle things or anything, but where I'm at right now, I feel like I've gone through a few things and things are starting to work. It doesn't mean you don't have stresses or pressure or mental health disruptions, as I like to call it, but you just get better at recognising it and having a system to come out the other side and manage it effectively, really.
I look forward to hearing some of those tools, but I guess for people who haven't heard your first story, I guess the pretty important parts of your journey, especially on the field, were the fact that you were signed very young by the Hurricanes. You had a shoulder that wasn't working for about 3 years and didn't get to play, so you had that, I guess, expectation of being a schoolboy star signed at a young age and not being able to prove your worth into a professional environment. So that was, I guess, one key moment for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. And then from the back side of that we'll talk about is having no contracts extended or anything like that at 2021.
Yeah.
And so you're left to the complete wilderness of rugby if that's what you're wanting to continue. But you're right, like at sort of 17, ended up having basically a paralysed arm. Sort of woke up one day, played a couple of games and something was up with my shoulder and my neck, and then woke up one day with searing pain down my right shoulder and couldn't lift my arm. And if anyone's had like a stinger or some nerve pain, it's like a hot knife just through the absolute body. So that chronic pain was just in my shoulder for a good few weeks, and then when that pain left, couldn't lift up my arm above horizontal because my serratus anterior, or the whole underside and backside of my arm, had stopped working. The nerve that controlled that muscle stopped working, and with that was a big challenge, because it wasn't like a stock standard injury like you'll return in 6 months or 9 months and you do X, Y, Z and you'll come back.
Yeah.
So at that time, that was a big smack in the face, because I remember being at school then, wanting to have a promising career, and at that time I was fortunate enough to be in the Hurricane schools and amongst the under 18 stuff and all of that. So as a schoolboy, that's like the pinnacle, you think, at that time, because that's like your life and everything, and then for that to be sort of like ripped away of injury, and then not knowing when I would play. Some people would say, oh, you'll be back in a month, or you'll be back in 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and then 4 weeks went past, 6 weeks went past, nothing had changed. 2 months had gone past, nothing had changed. And
no timeline, eh? It's
no
hard,
timeline, which is extremely hard. And at that time I was like, you put all your hope into reaching that destination of like, yep, it'll be right in a month, or yep, it'll be right in 6 weeks. And then when you got there and it wasn't right, that was just a massive blow to the psyche. And it reminds me of like Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning, and about, he's a psychiatrist in the concentration camps, and he said the people that actually didn't last were the people that were holding on for an end date.
Yeah.
And so they would hold on for the end date, and then they wouldn't be freed, and they would suffer massive consequences from that. Whereas if you sort of just recognise what the situation was and be like, okay, what can I do to be in the best shape, that would have saved me a lot of pain, because I remember at that time I was doing school and stuff fine, but I would be like looking in the mirror trying to work my arm, like couldn't lift up and answer a phone call, and my bicep would just be burning, and I'd be just so stressed at night, like anxiety through the roof about it getting right, or what I could do. Like I felt like I needed to like chop off my arm or something like that, like reading up on surgeries, and one surgery was they had to wire your scapula down to your rib cage so you could lift your arm. And I was like looking at all this stuff, and then thank God I didn't do any of that stuff. But that's the holes that you can get into. And I remember for a long time there, I would just be so anxious about trying to get it right and like praying to God to get it right. And I would fall asleep at like 2 a.m. like on like the couch in my room, or like on the side of my bed, or not even be in bed properly. I'd just fall asleep from exhaustion, wake up fully wired at like 6:30, 7 a.m. ready for school, do the school day, be distracted by that, and then come back and see, my arm wouldn't be right, and then I'd be same again, up all night wanting to will that to existence, and it will get right, dream about it coming right and pray to God and stuff like that, then it wouldn't be right, and then I fall asleep again, wake up and be so stimulated again. So that whole time in my last year of school, like I just was so wired, and then that would cause other problems from like your back going or other injuries and niggles, just because your whole body was stuck in such a sympathetic wired state. And then throw on top of that, being contracted out of school, like from my perspective, it was an opportunity to do everything a kid had dreamed about, playing professional rugby, an opportunity to be amongst sort of one of the best teams in New Zealand and stuff like that. So why not take it? And I just think I probably didn't handle that whole time as effectively as I could have. Initially, it was from a Hurricanes perspective, it was like a no-brainer. Like I was out for 2 years at minimum, so they could sign a player, but it wouldn't even affect the salary cap or whatever. And there's a big thing in New Zealand around retaining youth talent and stuff like that in their regions, and so you could sign a guy that was in the team, but then not have it impact your salary cap or anything like that. So why wouldn't you do it? And so from their perspective, it's probably easy because it wouldn't even affect the team. But from my perspective, I was like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm wanting to go. Yeah. And then that internal conflict of like pushing myself to be ready, but then my body's not even working. And it wasn't even working a little bit. Like my arm was not working at all. And coming from like a first 15 that wasn't a massive first 15 school, we hadn't even run like proper line outs and stuff. Yeah. And you got like, some of the best line-out forwards, like Victor Vito, best line-out forward in the country, and I'm trying to like do exactly what he is and stuff like that.
Comparing yourself to him.
Comparing yourself to those guys and fully grown men like Brad Shields and stuff, and just a youthful confidence that comes from basically having no limitations. You think you can take on the world, which is a good driver because it gets you in the arena and stuff like that, but not really realising the reality that one, my arm couldn't work, and one, there's quite a lot of development and things that had to go in place. So even throughout that time, which probably extended my time off the field because I was in such a stressed state internally of trying to catch up and everything off in terms of rugby, and then trying to catch up everything in my arm and stuff. And I was in the gym doing like a million exercises, all these band exercises and all that sort of stuff. Like I probably spent all my time in the gym just thinking that would get it right. Yeah. And then from there, and then you develop into like, you develop stuff like OCD tendencies and perfectionism tendencies and things like that, which is fine, but then when it's uncontrolled and it can be a real detriment, and then those things start to derail you, right? And
so what did that look like for you?
Well, for example,
52, you.
Well, that was, I'd never actually chewed my food 50 times, put it out there, but that's an example of it for sure. Like I gained control of my situation because physios and stuff, which basically ruled my life at that time because I wanted to get my body back able, they said, you do 25 bloody external rotation exercises, it will get better. I do 25, and then I'll do another 25, and then you just start getting into a habit of like doing things, trying to do things perfectly and trying to do things all perfect. And for me, like that's the only place I saw progression in my life, was basically doing things like really regimentally like that. And then also like I remember being in a time when I was trying to I just thought I just didn't have any luck. So I was like, oh yeah, if I do make my bed a certain way, do these exercises, train, I'll get better luck and I'll get, more luck. And then from that, things will flow and my arm will be better and things will be better. And so I started doing, everything to just such a perfectionistic, bloody detailed way. And just develop bad habits that were detrimental because there's no guarantee that you do 25 reps of your arm exercise and it's going to get right, you know what I mean? And so when you come onto the rugby field as well, at that time, I remember because I hadn't stepped on a rugby field for a couple of years, so I'd known all the plays and everything that we had on pieces of paper, but immediately as a rugby player, we already know that things never go to plan or they change. And I would look at the way the loose forwards were, where there was the eights in the middle and the 7 and 6s on the edge, and then these are certain plays that would happen, and all on piece of paper it would be a certain way. And so I'd have that in my mind, go out there and you're with Artie and Victor and stuff like that, and I'd just pull random things out. And I was like, my head was exploding because my whole life was such a regimented state. And then I was there and I just was like, what the heck? It was such a wake-up call, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so there's those mental things that that look like and I suffered with as well. And again, through that whole process, it's just a process of learning. And so you just learn to recognise that and then see what's the right way to do things or the way things flow or whatever. But it's the process that I sort of had to go through, I guess, and went through. And for a lot of time there, caused a lot of mental pain because things weren't done the way it was sort of in my head or anything like that. And through my rugby career at that time, I wanted to get to, playing well and being in the top of your game or anything like that, and then basically had developed such a training regimen, and then it wasn't translating to the field, and then that was adding to more anxiety. Then you start doubting yourself, am I even going to be good? Am I even a good rugby player or anything like that? And then by the end of my contracts there, I'd started to string a good few games together, and actually got on top of all that sort of stuff and was doing a good couple of things on the field. But I was still miles away. I was 20 years old, still miles away of where I needed to be, and that was my time with injury and the first taste of professional rugby. You know what I mean? And then and then that all ended in 2017, and so
So if you were going back in time, what would you do differently to handle that injury at such a young age?
Yeah, well, something that's really helped me, and we can dive into more detail of that, but in long story short, is there's the fantasy, and the fantasy is what we want, right? The fantasy is the perfect picture. Okay, I want to be this type of player, I want things to be this type of way, and for my reality was just not great and where I wanted to be, because I was either injured, not where I wanted to be in rugby, and I was suffering then. So I was suffering because my reality was not what I wanted, and then I was suffering because the fantasy was, I was stuck in the fantasy and I was trying to make the fantasy reality, and I wasn't aware of actually the proper process of doing that, because I thought, I want to be X type of rugby player, I want to be driven, I need to think like that and push like that and constantly work at things and do that. But that was just muddling me up. So if I went back in time, I would be like, okay, where am I right now in reality? Okay, your arm's not working, you're this type of rugby player that's just entering into professional space, your body's here, your mind's here. When you step onto a rugby field, you might have anxiety or stress or pressure, and this might happen. So that's reality of where you are. The fantasy is, I want to be this type of exciting player, I want to do this on the field, I want to be here. Okay, how do I get there? See where you are in reality, see where you want to go, and then bridge that gap by putting steps in place. And then I say that's putting the bricks down. So you're putting a brick down, so that might be doing your gym, and then that's one brick. And then that might be seeing where you are, okay, fantasy, I want to be this type of player, but there's things I need to learn. Okay, learn the line out first and do that, and then you start putting those bricks down, and then through that and through actioning those steps, the fantasy becomes reality. Whereas if you get stuck in just solely the fantasy of want to be here now, I want to be this type of rugby player, I want my body to work, but you see that it's not working, you suffer. And for a long time, I was suffering and I was slow through that process of actioning things, and I was suffering the whole time. Whereas if I went back, I would be like, okay, yes, I want to be here. How do I get there? X, Y, Z. Where am I right now? And actually just accept where I am right now. Whereas I was just not accepting of it at all. Sitting in my room, praying to the gods, and like willing my arm to get right, and just trying to like force everything to be the fantasy. Whereas I should have looked at it and be like, okay, this is where you are right now. What you can do is X, Y, Z to get you in the best possible shape for that fantasy to come true. And then that's all you could do. That's the only thing you had control of at that time. Whereas, if you just sit there like I was, then you can ruminate and get into a deep cycle of like trying to get things and then you don't see evidence of getting there, and then that date comes that it should have been there and you're not, so then that adds more stress and pressure. Whereas go back to what Viktor Frankl did, he would just, okay, what I need to do, I need to survive this next 5 minutes, I need to survive for the next 10 minutes, I need to just keep my mind centered where my feet are right now. You know what I mean? Whereas focus on a future date and you put all of your attention to that, you just don't take the actionable steps that actually move you towards the fantasy that you want.
Mate, that is powerful stuff, and good to get a couple of Viktor Frankl quotes in early. He's a true legend, and I did enjoy that book also. But you also mentioned when you were 20, you came out of that rugby bubble. So, like, this is obviously a situation that a lot of players, or everyone will get there at some point, usually at the end of their career, but you've hit that bubble really early. You've dreamed of being a professional rugby player. You've had a taste of it for 3 years, but never really got much of a chance, and then you're out of it. And what is that feeling like, and how did you manage that?
Oh, mate, like that time of my life was crazy because, it was something that you'd never want to happen. It was almost like one of your worst things that happens, and so it's like, holy shit. And the way I actually dealt with both in the end, which I got there in the end with my shoulder injury, to get back playing rugby first, and then the not having contracts, was I basically retired in my mind twice.
Did you?
Like literally, that's the way I dealt with it. And I didn't retire in fact I gave up. Like I never gave up. And people might have said, oh, because I went to uni in Canterbury, we can get on that, but people, oh, you went there for uni? No, I went there for rugby. But people say, like for me, it was full retire in my mind. Okay, I retire, and with that took basically the pressure of the fantasy or the thing that you want off you, and then it allowed you to focus on where I was right now in the reality. Okay, and what do I need to do? And I remember with my arm, like I sat there and I was trying to get it back perfect, functional and everything like that, and it just would never be the same. And even now it's not the same as it was, but I'm okay with it, and it's actually incredibly functional and it's fine, and I don't have any issues with it, except it cramps up sometimes. But I had to be like, okay, at that time, if I never play rugby again or professional or whatever like that, I just have to accept it. And like that's so scary, right?
Yeah.
And like that's so hard for someone to do because it feels like you're giving up. But by absolutely dropping that facade of trying to be someone or trying to be a certain type of way or anything like that, it allowed me to see where I was and just go, okay, it might not be perfect, I might not ever be back playing rugby, I might not be a professional, but I'm going to do what I can with what I can right now. And with that, it allowed me to just be like, humans aren't perfect, I'm not perfect, okay, I'll jump on a rugby field and see. And I had a couple of instances where my arm stuffed out, about 3 or 4 coming back, where my arm would blow out, wouldn't work, AC joint gone, wouldn't work. And then eventually got through the treachery or got through the bloody jungle of all the unknown and ended up back playing rugby and then got through that. Whereas if I didn't retire in my mind and take that fantasy away, I probably would have still been searching for that perfect arm and like getting my arm back to normal.
Yeah.
But like it wasn't going to be normal because something's happened to it, extremely happened to it. And the same thing with my career, right? So I basically got retired without having any professional rugby contracts, and so I had to be like, okay, if I never play rugby again, face that face that fear, and then you just fully have to accept it, and then okay, where am I right now, and what do I want to do? I want to be the best rugby player in the world. Okay, what do I need to do? Need to do this in type terms of rugby, this and that, and then by doing that, I got better at rugby and then got a contract again.
Yeah.
But if I was trying to like do the perfect picture and be a professional rugby player, make it and all that sort of stuff, I would have just stumbled along a lot. So the way I dealt with those 2 times was actually literally rock bottom. It felt like at the time, retire from rugby basically in your mind to cut the fantasy away and cut the facade away and see where I am right now and then move forward from there. And yeah, that's how I dealt with that.
Mate, that's a powerful way to do it, eh? And is that why you went down to Christchurch Uni, Canterbury Uni? Was it to give yourself something else, park that pressure of becoming that player, take away that fantasy like you mentioned, and then still in the back of your mind having hopes that you're going to come right and still play rugby, but just giving yourself that next pathway?
Yeah, correct. Well, there's a bit of both to that. So I sat down with myself and Mum was a great support at that time, and said, what do I want to do? Okay, so you scrap everything right back to where you are right now, fully acceptant of the situation that I'm in. It was where I am. I didn't have a degree, didn't have any rugby contracts. What do I want to do? I think I like accounting or money, business money. What's the nuts and bolts of business? Okay, accounting and finance. Okay, I can study that. Where can I study that? I can study it at these universities. Canterbury was one of them. Okay, so that was that side. The rugby side, okay, what do I want to do? Got nothing, whatever, want to be XYZ, want to play rugby and get better. Where's the best place? Probably club rugby, and Canterbury is probably good. Probably professional, in terms of professionally, though the best place in New Zealand, I think it's understandable, like world and stuff like that. Okay, actually Canterbury is the best place for me to be a rugby player of where I am right now. Yeah. And I knew the hurdles of there were no contracts there for like 2-3 years in terms of just the NPC team. There was a massive backlog, but again, just keep going back to what you can control right now. Forget the facade, forget the fantasy. That internal drive is always going to be there, but how do you make that reality? It's by being where you are right now and putting that bridge brick by brick down to get to where you want to go. And that's why I went down there for the rugby, but then also the outside of rugby, because I can't just live in a fantasy of dreaming about being a rugby player when you're bloody playing Div 2 club rugby or something like that. So you got to accept that shit, I got to be doing something else too. And rugby doesn't last forever, as we all know. And so you want to be doing something else. And that's why I did the outside of rugby and the in rugby, and Canterbury was the best place for it. And although it was so hard to navigate through and so many challenges, actually having the purpose and being there allowed me to just face all those challenges. With great resolve really, and it ended up being the best place for me to be, and I think has helped my rugby so much because it gets you out of the rugby bubble. You get real life experience. You're working there. You're trying to study plus play rugby as well as you can. You have to compete with everyone. the academy system's stacked up there. There's so much talent, and plus it's they've got a great, as you know, you're in there, you know, whether you're playing club or NPC or whatever, it's all kind of, it's a small town, right? Everyone knows all the rugby players and stuff, so it's quite easy to get involved and get opportunity. So that's why I made the decision to go down there, and it wasn't an easy decision in terms of my whole life. It was an easy decision in terms of what I wanted to do, but at that time, my dad had just passed away, and so I was leaving mum, who I was living closer to, being around Hawke's Bay, Wellington. She's in Hawke's Bay, to Canterbury, and literally just after almost a couple months after my dad had passed away. So it wasn't easy in terms of that. And mum gave me her blessing to, you know, chase my dreams and stuff like that. And yeah, that's where I went down there.
It's so cool from your mum, like to give you that blessing to chase the dream that she obviously knew that you wanted to do, and you did. Obviously, you've spoken about why that was your reason to go down there, but I'm also keen to hear a little bit more about your dad, because I know you're keen to talk about that, and it's something that not many people are open to talking about because it's such a hard conversation. And your dad, obviously, farmer, champion man. How did it happen, or what do you remember about it?
Yeah, so those you that don't know, my father unfortunately passed away to suicide, and that's crazy because I sort of knew a bit about mental health and things like that. We all think we do, but we never think that it would ever affect you or your family. Just I think like cancer, like I'd never thought, you know, it had never affected my family or anything like that. Mental health had never affected my family in that, you know, obvious or anything. And then for my dad to pass away to suicide was just like, what the heck? And it's just completely flipped my life upside down, and will never be the same for it or anything like that. And in that time, like, I'd never seen my dad suffer in terms of the noticeable anxiety, depression, or anything too. Like, I'd never seen him battle or anything, or be stuck in his room or anything like that. He was always like such a strong pillar of not just our family but community. You know, people look up to him. I looked up to him, so strong and resilient and fierce. And so I was like, it's just so confusing. Like, how can a man who was that resilient then be deemed not resilient by falling into the traps of suicide? And I was just so confused at the time, and still have a lot of unanswered questions, but we'll never get answers to those questions. And the thing is with all of that, is you have to be extremely proactive in your own mental health, and you have to be proactive in the fact is not letting yourself fall into a mental hole. And that's where unfortunately my dad went wrong, is his mind fell into a deep hole, which then when you're in that hole, you don't know what's up or down. It's like flying a plane in a complete whiteout. You don't know what's up, down, left or right, and you could be flying into a mountainside, you know, right in front of you. And with mental health, whether you're the most resilient person like my dad, or you're so driven and focused and so strong physically, mentally, or anything like that, you can fall into a hole. And if you fall into that hole, it's known that, you know, a decision can be made that can change your life forever. And in that hole, it's so cruel that the human mind literally wants to kill itself. And that happened to our family. My dad was such a strong bloke in terms of physically and mentally being able to push through pain and stresses, and farming's no easy task. Like, whether it's financial or animals being sick or banks and land, and these are all stresses that he had dealt with previously, probably not efficiently, which led to falling into a hole, but dealt with stresses in terms of I'd never seen him stressed or anxious before. So we get all these stresses and dealt with them. And then when he passed, like, these stresses were all what he had dealt with before, but for some reason he wasn't efficient at dealing with them, which led to his mind falling into that hole, which then the mind, as we know, wants to kill itself. And that's just so bloody harsh, and that's why individuals need to be proactive at recognizing things, or recognizing the mind when it dips into this hole. And that's the whole thing for me, because I've seen, like, although I haven't been like directly like suicidal, I've seen through chronic injury and pain, or things not going your way and not able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. If your mind falls into a hole, you literally can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You don't have hope. You don't have anything. And if you're in that hole, the brain wants to kill itself. And people say, you should think of your kids and think of your family or anything like that. But we've seen time and time again of super successful, wealthy, lovable people, funny people, all sorts of walks of life, whether you have addictions or no addictions, or, as I said, money or no money or anything like that. The mind, when it falls into a hole, it can't see out of that hole, and poor decisions can be made that you ultimately don't know. Because when my dad died, I said, I just knew that wasn't my dad. And I was at home a few weeks, the 2 weeks leading up to his death, and he just wasn't my dad. Like, he was not my dad. And we'd gone to the doctor the day before he died, 10 days before he died. Mum was there the whole time, and she was in it battling as well, because stressful times and everything. And we were all there. We had plans in place. We had things in place, and it still happened. And this is why, fortunately, my generation and generations after us and things like that are starting to learn and recognise the actual sickness that mental health is, or whether it's anxiety or depression, and the sickness being that it can get you really chronically sick, that you fall into a hole and then your brain wants to kill itself, and just being really aware of that. And whether you're, as I said previously, super resilient, tough, old school, just you have to just really see in reality right now of what's happening with your mind. And the proactiveness is, the ambulance at the top of the hill, not the bottom of the hill. The proactiveness is having a parachute before you jump out of the plane. It's not trying to imagine a parachute when you're halfway fall into the ground. You know what I mean? And the parachute is, understanding and being open to efficiencies of the mind and flaws of the human mind, because humans are flawed and nobody's perfect. And if the human, and just accepting that the human mind is flawed, allows us to see, okay, I could be in this situation. Because people say, I've never had mental health issues or anything like that. I've never had mental disruption. But it's like, come on, man. Like you might have not been really depressed, unable to get out of bed, but sure, if you've challenged yourself, if you've tried to do better for your family or whatever, you would face mental disruption or challenge. And through that, you would have stress or pressure. And through that, things come up. And so just accepting that humans are flawed, we all face mental disruption. What am I going through right now? and actually just cut the facade out, just cut the facade out of you can handle anything. Sure, like in a healthy mind, you can handle anything, and I noticed that with my career, I was like, okay, I know that I'm resilient and tough in terms of like being able to like work hard and things like that. I know that I can, push myself really hard and drive. Okay, and then I was noticing that I was being so I wasn't good at that. I wasn't really good at handling criticism, and I was like, what the heck? Before I could handle lots of criticism, but now I'm just not really handling criticism well. I could push through, whether it be a bronco or something like that, like push through the absolute pain barrier. Whereas now I'm like feel like I'm tapping out early, or something like that. Or you're on the rugby field and you could work really hard, and then I just noticed I was like, oh, what the heck? I'm just not very good at that anymore. It's not like I had all of a sudden not become resilient. It's, you might have a resilience bucket for, say, that's 25 litres. Sure, that's a big bucket of resilience, but if it's filled with water and leaking over the top, there's no room for it. It's spilling. And that's what happens with your mind. And what happened with me with rugby, I was like, I'm just not being efficient, and I'm not handling stress and pressure as efficiently as I can, and literally accepting that and going, what can I do to be better at handling this? Literally made me go a million times better. And through stresses and pressures and anxieties and things like that, if we look in rugby and out of rugby and in life with my dad and things like that, if you look at the situation, you go, okay, am I actually handling this the best way I can? What's actually going on right now? How do I better manage this right now? How do I have a better outcome? Even just being open to that allows us to be open to the chance of actually getting better, rather than just being like, nah, it'll be right, toughen up, carry on, all these sorts of things. Because as men, we naturally are like that, but I challenge it to say, are we actually as efficient as we say we are? And something just popped up in mind there. I heard that the Warriors did a questionnaire at the end of last year that said, how resilient are you? Lots of the individuals said, yeah, I'm, really resilient, 8, 9s out of 10s. How resilient is the team? 4s, 5s. And it's like, well, if the individual thinks they're 8, 9, 10 resilient, but then they say that the team's 4, 5 resilient on the resilient scale, there's something not working there. So you can be you can think you're super resilient, but are you actually being efficient and effective with that resilience? And you accept, okay, I probably am not handling stress or pressure or things that are going in my mind as effectively as I can. Do I have the potential to be super resilient or have that full 25 litre bucket? Yes. But what can I do to, be more efficient at it and be better? And literally just breaking that facade down of who you think you are to the world and being like, I might not be good enough here, is super scary. And for me, I was like that with my career. It was only about a year and a half ago, because I wanted to be playing, and I internally believed I should be playing at this sort of level, but my results or my actions weren't representative of that. And it's almost that retirement factor had to be like, what if I'm not going to be an All Black? What if I'm not going to be the best rugby? What if I'm not a good rugby player at all? What if I can't even play rugby? And that's super scary because it's confronting. But accepting and looking at reality right now, dealing with that pain of might not be good enough, allows you to then make a choice of action. Whereas if you just continue and try to get better and improve, but not really face the reality that you might not be handling things as best you can, you just suffer. and you suffer because you get stuck in the fantasy of being a perfect picture, or being this XYZ or whatever, and you're just inefficient and you're limiting yourself. And I think if we learn these things through experiences throughout our life, from being young to middle age to whatever, then we get better at handling them and recognizing them. And I could probably say that, sure, Dad went through stresses and pressures and stuff, but he probably got by gritting his teeth, dealing with it. But I don't know, like, he might have been like had anger outbursts then, and so like if someone's really angry or like yells at you, you think, we all think, oh, well, he's probably not handling this too well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if a coach yells at you and screams at you, like, but in a pressure situation, like if it's to rack you up, it's to rack you up. But if it's in a more precious, you're like, I think everyone instinctively knows, well, this guy's probably not handling it too well. I mean, like things, so then that's like a sure sign that, okay, he's probably not handling it well, you know what I mean? And that's what men do. We like, okay, grit our teeth, toughen it out, go harder, work harder, pour it into work. But like at the end of the day, you're not getting efficient at doing it. You're grinding the stone down, and normally you would be able to handle stresses, but at some point you might not be able to handle it and the bucket's overflowing.
Yeah.
So challenge yourself with those questions, and we have to do this, because if we don't, we're always going to push ourselves and drive, right? But if we don't, we can fall into a hole, and we know that if we fall into this dark hole, that we often aren't in control of the plane, and things can happen, and those things can have terrible results. And I just look at my family, and as I said previously, my dad was like the most resilient, good guy, tough in terms of farming and all that, knowledgeable, helped his mate out who was going through a tough time the year before he passed, was open enough to speak to doctors, but probably wasn't proactive enough in stopping the mind. And that's probably because he didn't know, but stopping the mind falling into a hole, and he's not with us now.
So was he going to the doctor for mental health?
Yeah.
So he was aware he was struggling.
Yeah. And he had support through my mum and us, and that to go to the doctor and ask. And this is where our systems aren't great.
Yeah.
They're not great, because doctors aren't trained like a psychiatrist is trained. Counsellors aren't even trained, or sight people aren't trained as effectively. And that's not a sign to worry, but that's a sign to be proactive yourself, and to try to see what you can do to be in a better situation, and not just rely on one person. Like, speak to this person and speak to this person, and gather evidence here and see what works for you. And that's helped myself personally, because I've had different mental disruptions, as I said, and it was the start of last year, because I'd mentioned I'd driven for a long time just to be a professional rugby player and get in the door to play, which is often so hard to do, right? And 2021, I went down. I didn't have anything after Tasman season. Clark Dermody gave me a 2-week training contract to come down at the end of pre-season. Went in there, did that, and then played a couple games. And so I would, like, because I always felt I was good at driving and going hard, so I'd go hard, and then I would crash, and like you'd get like injured or something like that.
Yeah.
And then go, and then crash, and then go, and crash. And I was like, what the heck? And then, because you just think, go harder, train better, and yeah, sure, be smart in that, because I wasn't dumb, but I was like, what the heck? Why am I getting injured, or why would this happen, or why am I battling with consistency? and I was like stuck in such a sympathetic state of drive that I was just exhausted. And I remember had a great off-season, pre-season leading into the 2022 season for Super Rugby. Felt best of my life in everything. And then I just felt, oh yeah, I'll need to do more. I need to do more. And I went out and did a session and my back just went boom and buggered my back. And I was like, all right, I need to start the season. You know, you want to be starting the season in the team, because if you're not in the team, then it can be a tough uphill battle, especially if the team starts going well and that. The coach doesn't probably want to change it. Did my back. Literally, we played the Crusaders pre-season.
That's right.
Felt all good. Was pumped up. Marklin Pablo, Matera, wanted to get into him. And then did my back that weekend, because we played Friday, I think, and then had like 3 days. And so I was like, yeah, I'll get fitter. I did my back. And then, basically couldn't play next game, but took like, through the doctor and that, took like heaps of tramadol and stuff like that to try help my back to play. Played poorly to where I wanted to play. And then we were in Queenstown at that time as well. And I was just, remember like, injured, played poorly, had been like wrapped up in wanting to, that end date of wanting to be like named in round 1 or whatever, and all of that. And then I had a panic attack, bro. Full blown, and I'd never had a panic attack.
What does that look like?
Mate, I didn't know. I was just full freaking out, like heart rate through the roof, like tense as my neck was all tensed up.
Where were you?
In Queenstown.
Yeah, just in your room?
Yeah, just in my room. So, and just full, finished the training or whatever like that, and probably just had time to myself and just full panic attack.
Right.
And I was like, what the heck? And I just had to control my mind and be like, okay, like, your mind's trying to go off on all these tangents and think what ifs and futures and all that. So I was battling with like, would I ever be a rugby player? Would I ever make money? Would I ever bloody do what I wanted to do? And the reality was I was in a far better position than I was a year ago, because I just signed a new like 2-year contract, started flying money, like I was in the professional game. I was injury free basically and playing well. I didn't have a serious injury, so everything was going good. But then I was like panicking. I was like, what the heck, and that was a big eye opener at the time. To actually fire out, I don't know if I'm being as efficient as I think I am. And this is like, I knew a bit about mental health and stuff, and this is only 2022. And I was just like, I actually don't think I'm being as efficient. And through that time, managed to be alright. I was still playing good rugby. Things were flowing, but I had to be like, well, I don't think I'm as top as I can be, even though I'm playing all good, doing alright, had an alright season, but I just like wasn't internally like fully happy. And this is where I think people can get mistaken, and they can think, oh, I hate rugby, or it's a rugby or something like that. Whereas I knew I love rugby, and I knew it wasn't rugby. But that's a sure sign that you're not doing mentally well if you're starting to like hate something you love.
Yeah.
And with that, I spoke to sort of like, I wanted to figure out, okay, I've done like the journaling, I've done the breath work, I've done the medication, I've tried that, I've tried other things, and they all help, and they all can help, but I'm not fully right, and I want to know why. And something that really helped me was understanding what happens in the mind. And I seeked out a couple of psychiatrists, and I wanted to know like what's happening in my mind, because I felt like I could crawl over broken glass with a purpose in mind. But if I didn't know what was happening, I would fall victim to all these panics or all these little things. And you got to think at the same time, I'm still playing professionally and doing all good in that.
That's crazy,
And I just think, but I see this all the time.
Yeah.
Like I see now, like I think like literally majority of rugby players probably have mental disruption or aren't at their full capacity because they don't have proper efficient systems to deal with what's going on in their mind and life. That was me. And then through that time, met with a couple of people and developed a few systems. And one of the systems was actually the sympathetic state. I was in such a sympathetic state, which is like your high blood pressure, your eyes are like dilated, you're sweaty all the time. I'm like a sweaty mess all the time, you know what I mean? Like going like ready to kill, it feels like. And that's a rugby environment's like that all the time. And so if I'm wired like that, I'm going to be doubly like that. But I was like that, not just at training, but then at night I'd be like that, and then in my recovery I'd be like that. I was doing these ice baths and I was like that. I was doing these journaling and I'm like in this damn ice bath like yeah and it's like defeats the whole purpose of doing it. But I didn't know, and I do these journalings like I'm better or something. But like that's not an effective way of using all that, because your whole time you're in this high adrenalized basically state, and then over time you get less and less efficient, and then something crashes and injury. So that was happening in rugby. I could externally drive, and probably when I didn't achieve or anything, that switched internally, and I was like less efficient, and then something would happen. And then it wasn't until I used that drive that I had, and then I would, at the end of the drive sessions or something like that, the sympathetic sessions, I would actively try to lower, and that's why people actively try to lower into a parasympathetic state, to lower their arousal level, to be more efficient at the drive later on. Whereas if you're just stuck in the drive, that drive slowly goes and crashes. But if you drive and then reset, and then drive, then reset, that drive will be 100% fueled the whole time. And that's what I started to do, and that helped shitloads.
Yeah, how have you done that? Is that mainly through breath work or?
Well, it took me a while to understand, but lots of people do the ice baths, that might do journaling or grounding or something, but it's how you do it. It's not just doing it, because I was doing that, I'm like, I'm not feeling mentally better. I'm just not. I'm doing these ice baths, I'm in there for 10 minutes, freezing my ass off. I'm not. Whereas the difference between like getting in there and just holding on and just gritting, because you're in such a adrenalized state, whereas getting in there and recognizing the stressor, which is an ice or something like that, recognize the stressor and allowing yourself to be calm through it allows basically to control it and prolong it. And whether that's in general life or something like that, you might, for farming for example, you got shitloads of stuff to do. Stuff's coming at you all the time, or work, things are coming at you. Work's endless, right? There's always work to be done. And so if you're in that moment and you're like, okay, I'm doing my breath exercises, it's not fucking happening, it's not working, then you're not doing it right. The reason why you do a breath exercise or something like that is to gain control of the system. So you have a stressor, something's stressed you out, something's been an event, and it's recognizing that, and then it's allowing yourself through body and mind to lower the arousal to that. So we look at anxiety, right, and we think anxiety is it. Like, that's the problem. But anxiety is actually a secondary thing. So there's an event that happens, and then anxiety is the secondary thing that comes over to try shut those feelings down. So we have an event, right? An event will happen, and we have an internal stimulus to the event or a feeling, and then the anxiety will come down to try shut that down. We only really recognize it at the anxiety level because it's a panic in the mind, it's a freak out, it's a sweaty palm, it's a eye dilation, it's a cold hands or whatever. Whereas anxiety's second. There's an event and there's a feeling, and that feeling will bring like discomfort or whatever, and then we freak out. So an example of that might be like what was something that you would freak out in rugby? It might be like
conversion.
Yeah, right. Okay.
To win the game right in front. There you go.
Yeah, conversion. I'm no psych, so don't listen to me probably. But if there's a conversion to win the game, that feeling, you're freaking out to win the game because there's a consequence to it, right?
Yeah.
There's a consequence to doing this event. There's a consequence, and there's like internal pressure. And so that event is kicking the goal. The feeling is you might not be good enough. You might be fail. Your career might be judged on that. Judgment is a big one. You might be done. And also a system that might have been installed while you were younger, where you went to kick and your brother you missed a kick, and your brother probably mocked the shit out of you. Like he told you, he probably mocked you or something like that, and so you audibly have a negative experience to a similar event.
Mate, you know too much about me.
No, so you're going up there to kick, right?
Yeah.
You've got this event that's provided a negative stimulus from when you're younger or something like that. Obviously there's different levels of trauma, but that can be labelled as like a lower traumatic event because it had such a stimulus to it, right? So you're in there going to kick a goal. You have this feeling of not being good enough, being judged and all of that sort of stuff, and then the consequences of missing. You let your team down, all this sort of stuff. And even when I'm talking, what are you feeling in your body? Probably like a rise in blood pressure, like tensions increasing. You're starting to feel a bit panicky in the chest, and that's anxiety coming over. But what happens in that moment, if you recognize the event, right, and then you can look at your past and be like, okay, I've probably had a reaction, and then you can see it. You can recognize what's happening in your body. Okay, my body is freaking out, but you got to do what's required. And how do you do what's required? Okay, kick the goal. I don't know, no kicker, but line up the seam, follow through.
Yeah.
And so you might have developed a system that was like head down, follow through, carry on running through, whatever. And that's the process of doing. So then we look at this process a lot, and coaches say, just do the task at hand, focus on the task, do the process. But like, where's the education around all this sort of stuff, you know? And that's where I was thinking like, sure, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm doing the task, man.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it efficiently. But if you know what's happens in the mind, because the mind, this is like a very predictable pattern that happens in all stress or all pressure situations. There's an event, we have a reaction to that, or a feeling. Anxiety comes through to stop that feeling, and that's like what I said, increased pressure, all that sort of stuff. But throughout all of that, you have to look at the fantasy of, okay, I want to make this kick. It's all evident. I want to make this kick. I want to do this because X, Y, Z. Where I am in reality, okay, I'm right in front of it. I need to do, what do I do to get the fantasy? Okay, follow through, head down, kick, whatever, and then you go and action that. And through actioning that and doing it, you'll feel better out the other side because you made the kick or whatever. But there's going to be a strong reaction to that in the first place. And just, recognising that has helped me a shitload, because I know I did, through habits of, as I said, being injured or being dropped, or I would often get only like one chance in the sort of Canterbury or Crusader setup, because there were so many guys there. I'd only get like one chance, and then for like 6 weeks I like wouldn't get another opportunity. I might come in for a training or something. And so you come in and I'd do well at it for one event, but then I wouldn't do one for another 6 weeks, so I kind of went over my head. But when I was playing week in and week out for Highlanders, like boom, boom, I'd be like boom 1 week, and then I'd be like, what the heck? Like, I'm not as consistent because I hadn't experienced that before. But if you recognize that, okay, bang, these feelings might come out of like not being good enough, being a burden, letting the team go, consequences or whatever. Despite that, you perform. Despite that, you perform. Despite you do what's required, know your task, know your role, and just get better at focusing on that, focusing on that, focusing on that. And through that, you action things and then you feel better. But yeah, it's a process.
Crazy that I'm talking to a player right now. I feel like I'm talking to a mental skills coach. This is very impressive. But I do want to, you mentioned like how many, I can't remember the number you said, but a majority of the players or you can tell are struggling or they're not working as efficiently. So like, what sort of advice would you give to those players, or what do they need to do to become more efficient?
I'd say immediately, just think, okay, situations that you go through on the training field, on the playing field or whatever, look at it and be like, okay, am I actually handling this as efficiently as I can? And if you drop all like the fantasies away and the facades of I want to do this, or I am because the perfect image is doing this, or whatever, it's like no, drop those away, drop things away. It's gonna feel uncomfortable to accept reality, but look at it. For me, it was like, you're a shit rugby player.
Yeah.
Like, or just be real harsh and be like, okay, the reality is I'm probably poos at rugby.
Self-awareness has to come into play here, right? Like, it's probably the most underrated thing in a rugby player's career, I reckon, is being able to have self-awareness of what you're good at, what you're not good at.
And self-awareness isn't just recognising internally just yourself. It's like recognising what other people's opinions might be, or like where you might sit in the whole, echelon of everything, right? Because we as rugby players, we're all like competitors or whatever like that. A lot of it's like, oh, fake it till you make it, block out the noise, and then everyone's thinking, this guy's like playing up, you know what I mean? So there's an element of like, okay, you need to look on the reality of yourself and where you are. You might be this level of rugby, but then also what's other people saying. And it's not a point of like all their opinions and right or anything like that. It's gathering information to see in reality of where you are right now. And that's why I encourage people to, see where you are right now, know where you want to go. And don't be afraid of cutting those loose, because there's power in the retirement, as I said, because the retirement or whatever is coming back to reality. Yeah. And then see where you want to go, have that North Star. And I'm probably lucky in the fact that I'm always driven and want to go a certain way. And I think we instinctively, most people, I feel like in rugby at least, they know where they want and they want to go. Every Kiwi kid says they want to be an All Black or whatever. So know where you want to go, all of that, but really get that information of where you are in reality through coaches or players. And an underrated quality of a good coach is being honest and connecting, and that's something we're lucky and fortunate enough through like Tasman and Highlanders and most professional rugby, to be fair, in New Zealand have got to the point where an honest coach sits you down and be like, okay, look, this is where you are. And this is where Andrew Goodman was really good, because he was like, look, this is where like you are as a rugby player. I have full faith that you can get here. So he was showing the fantasy, but he was showing the reality of where I am. He was playing on the fantasy of potential, and then he was saying, okay, do X, Y, Z, make the choice of doing X, Y, Z, and that will put you in the best position to get the fantasy. It's not saying you'll get the fantasy or whatever, because humans are flawed, nobody's perfect, you can't predict the future. But if you see where you want to go, get the information on reality of where you are and how you're handling things, and then go, okay, how do I do this, X, Y, Z? And a good way to see that as a player after you've done that is to be like, okay, as I just said, the reality to fantasy, which is a good thing. And the mental side of things is so what happens is there'll be an event, right? And you have a freaking strong stimulus to this event. and there's actually ways that you can rewire that, all right, and it's called EMDR, so eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a psychology technique that psychologists and psychiatrists and stuff use. And what it does is there'll be traumatic events through your life, and they might be extremely significant events, like and PTSD from that might be a significant byproduct. But these, might be natural disasters or family violence or drugs, alcohol, things that have happened, or there might be minor events. And by minor, I don't mean minor as in lesser stimulus. I just mean minor as in it might be through your childhood, your brother laughing at you or something like that, you know what I mean? Which is fine, because when we're a baby and we're like 0 to 7, as people say, you know how you would have heard, people, from 0 to 7, it's yourself. What people are really saying then is you're a bloody blob of brain matter, and you're developing systems along the way, and you're developing software to install on that brain, and that's how you react to the world around you, right? And so there's no good or bad or good system and bad system or anything. It's just you are this blob of material, and you develop systems through your environment. And there's a whole other stuff you can go on about that, but just think about that, and think about, okay, in rugby or life, am I having a really strong stimulus to something? Because something might happen, I might get dropped, and I have a freaking strong reaction to that, and that reaction is coupled with the event. And what EMDR does helps to break the event happening and the reaction to it. And so for me, like injury was a big one. It's because I injured my neck and my nerve. And so if you injure your neck and your nerve, you're pretty worried about getting a neck injury or a nerve injury in rugby again. And that's, a big risk in rugby because we've seen it happen in things. And so for ages, I had this event of getting injured in my neck. And when I went to play rugby again, I was like internally worried about tackling and things like that. You'll have a bit of worry, but this was like worry that I was like sick. Like it was a full blown reaction. Like I was out there and I was like freaking out. Which is something you don't want. And I actually haven't done the EMDR on this, but this is what happened naturally, was slow separation of that event, getting injured, and then really reaction to that. And then I was able through that to recognize that that injury was a one-off and it could happen again, and there's a risk that it might happen again, but you're still able to go and play. And through rugby, like for example, you might have an event of like dropping the ball, or you might be, let's just say, use your example. Okay, kicking a goal. When you were younger, you might have been laughed at or something like that, and that provided a massive reaction, and that's coupled with the event. So every time, because the brain works in predictable ways, every time you go kick a goal, guess what's going to come up? That event and that reaction to that event, and they're attached. But what you can do through EMDR, it's a way of bringing up the event and bringing up the reaction of, like, you might get a dry mouth, you might get like playing with your lips and getting a tick, like, and like doing heaps of weird stuff. I don't know if you've ever noticed people, like, when they're talking to you, or you might, as a coach, you might be talking to players and be like, they might be playing with their tongue or their lips, or like swallowing lots. And so that you're starting to notice, okay, their anxiety, you got a pretty strong reaction to this. And so identify those events, identify the strong reactions to it, and EMDR can work to separate the two. So you still have the event, but you don't have the strong reaction to it. And then you might be up there goal kicking, right? But you don't have that strong reaction. You might still have a little bit there, but the idea is that you don't. And then you just have to control the moment and understand what you need to do. and go and execute it.
Jeez, I wish I spoke to you 10 years earlier.
No,
mate.
it's not me. Honestly, it's not me.
genuine.
But no one speaks
Nah.
about this.
Well, and that's what was going to be my next question. Like, how have you learnt all this? Because, like, I'm listening to you here, I'm thinking, this guy is onto it. How's he picked up this?
Yeah, I think potentially I've always been curious about it, but I've gone through certain things, and if I didn't learn, career done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so through that complete pain of being in your room and just not knowing any way out, and your head is just absolutely hurting, and you just have to look at it and be like, there must be a way, there's always an answer. And I got that saying, Sam, there's always a solution to a problem, there's always an answer to a question, and there's always a meaning to a life. Sam, just keep thinking, there's always a solution, there's always an answer, there's always a meaning. And through that pain, you might be just in there, just not knowing which way to go out. So if you're in the hole, and a way to know that you're in the black hole is to be there and be like, shit, I'm actually not seeing any hope, or I'm not seeing any way out. So you need to get that parachute going, and the way you get the parachute going, connection is one. Like, it might be like doctor, medication, seek this professional help. And so that's a way to pull you out. And for loved ones that are someone might be going through something, it's to provide that connection to help them just get above the parapet a little bit, and just to see out of the hole, and then through there you can like do stuff. But the main thing is being there and not being able to see, and so you got to recognize that and be proactive. And for me, I guess that was it. Like, I was in that and being in the hole through injury and career, and if I didn't, I wouldn't be playing rugby or something like that. And through all that, you had to be like, shit, like, I need to do it. And I've been fortunate enough to talk to a few people, talk to a few psychiatrists and psychologists to just try to understand. I did study psychology at uni as a minor, so it has always been an interest. But sport's fascinating as well, right? Because it's like a test tube. It's a test tube just to see what's going on mentally, and it's so cool to see. Like, it's really exciting now, whereas previously I'd probably just hold on and hope. As we often do, but now it's like, okay, this is exciting. I want to be in the test tube. I want to be in the biggest arenas or whatever, and just see what goes on in my mind, what goes on in the 15 people around you, the opposition. How do you reacting to situations, and then being able to execute. Like, you look at Nathan Cleary in that grand final. He missed 2 crucial tackles before that or whatever. How many players do you see who make a mistake, or they don't start the game? Or I've seen players like, you talk to players, right? You've probably spoken to players, and they'd be like, I need to have a good hit or a good carry, and then I'll have a good game. And if I don't,
first touch, need to get in the game early.
Jesus, I'm like, it is. If I'm playing against him, I'm like, I got this guy. I got this guy good, because like rugby is such an unpredictable sport at times. Like, if you don't do a carry, your whole game's derailed. Like, you're setting yourself up for failure. And we set ourselves up for failure because we're in a sport that you need to be perfect. You need to do things well. There's consequences. There's all these sorts of things. But like Nathan Cleary, going back to that point, couple missed tackles, 3 tries up for Ezra and Mam. Broncos on an absolute hum. What do you do in that situation? The mind wants to escape, because back when we were young, early doors, that fight or flight stimulus was there to protect us, right? And so the mind wants to get out of that situation. But as I said, sport's a great test tube. You're in that moment. You want to fight, you want to freak out, you want to get tense or whatever like that. What does he do? He steps up, makes a 40-20, makes a few passes to line, steps in, scores a try, people are under fatigue, and that's the beautiful arena to do that. Like this, like, and mentally, I think for sport, like so many people are there physically and everything like that, but mentally is like, and that's something I've been really excited about, and so excited that I've been able to like implement a little bit. I want to do way more, but you just see it on the field, and like it's such a beautiful arena to try do that. And that's why rugby's such a good sport, because there's 15 people on each side. There's all different shapes and sizes. There's different skills and abilities. So many different people's things that happen in their lives and everything like that. Everything goes in to affecting what happens on the field. And as a coach or whatever like that, shit, that must be so stressful, because you just like, okay, I've taught all these guys everything, I've prepared them as well as I can, and then on the weekend they don't do it. It must be like, Jesus, I'm a player and I'm already bored. Imagine me as a coach, I'm like terrible. But as a player, you're in there doing it, and you can test yourself and the blokes around you or a woman around you to do it. And isn't that exciting?
So cool. And mate, it's got me excited for watching you play for Tasman this weekend, just putting the boys on your back like Cleary.
Hell, I wish I was bloody, 1, I had that bank account, 2, I had that looks, and then 3, had those skill set. But he's 2 years younger than me too, the bastard.
As long as you've got the mindset, that's all that matters, and that's all I've learned from this. But I do have one more question sort of for you that I was thinking about after talking to Sam Matavesi on the podcast a few weeks ago. He spoke about losing his mum at a young age and how hard it was for him to sort of get over. So obviously you lost your dad, and I guess it's around advice for people who do lose someone close to them, because obviously suicide rates at a ridiculously high rate at the moment. People are losing loved ones. He spoke about how there's not enough support for people who do lose people close to them and how hard it is to deal with. So I was just thinking if there's anything there from you.
Yeah, I think, like, for example, what you're doing is providing people a platform and asking those questions, because there's things, as we've just spoken about, that didn't help me and then that have helped me. And there's so many people out there who have gone through things before, and you don't have to go through these things. And that's the thing, like, people also say, oh, you learn all this stuff. No, I was going to learn all this stuff anyway, or like, things, this might happen in this, but nah. You can learn by, things that have happened, and actually there's systems, and just learn a system. And so by you asking these questions, thanks very much for that, because it does help people, I believe. But look, what happened to my family is super, like, just so tragic, and we've got a lot of work to do in New Zealand with men, with women, with generally knowledge and understanding. And I think your life changes forever. My life and my family's lives change forever, and we carry that hurt like every day, all day, and we'll never get over that hurt. You never do. You take the qualities of the people you love, and you try to emulate that every day. And I try to be the man what my dad was. He was a great man to our family, and worked hard and had really great qualities. And so you try to do that, and I think that's a way that you honour them. But you also acknowledge, like, it's shit. Like, I'm going to have to carry it for the rest of my life, and I remember the last time I saw my dad alive, and I was standing across the fence on the farm, and just, he was holding my side, like, just holding, and hugged him goodbye. I didn't think he was going to die, and we always trusted him and trusted that the plans we'd put in place, and so for that, you can't trust someone in that space, and you need to be proactive if you are in that space. But we're gonna live with that forever, and people live with things forever. But if you take the qualities that they live by, and you put that in you, and you try to live their legacy and help people, I think I get a real boost by that. Probably helps me by sharing these stories. Because I don't want anyone to have to go through that, and that's the heartache of suicide and tragic death or anything. We carry that all the time. That's not to mean that you can't live your life and do these things. The humans we're bloody resilient, but these things don't have to happen as well, and they don't have to happen for you to learn and live for the life that you want. It's just a hole that's there forever. And so the advice that I'd give to anyone who's lost anyone young is try to live their good values that they had, connect and be tight with your loved ones. I think that's a beautiful thing. That my mum and 2 sisters are really strong, beautiful women, and we have a great bond together. We did before and we do now. So continue to have that, and relationships with people are the ultimate. I feel probably having relationships with friends and family, and you helping people and people help you, and trying to have those connections, because that's where, that's probably what we remember at the end of the day. And anyone's going to be driven to do any amounts of things in terms of what they want to achieve in their life, and that's fine. Some people will just be happy and content with a certain level, and some people want to drive, but throughout all of that is relationships and connection. So to grow that, and through that, I think, well, that's what I've taken from my dad's death. But you never get over it. You're always left with a hole, and sometimes would seem fine, and then other times just really miss him. Their 6th anniversary of Dad's passing was only a month ago. His birthday was a few days ago, and those times are always really tough. The firsts are tough. The first is so tough.
Yeah.
Because it's so unknown, and it's and those will always be emotions, but it's right to feel those emotions, I think. Don't block them off, because we don't want to block them off. We just want to see it for what it is, and work through it and be okay. And that's for anyone, not just who's lost a loved one, but anyone that's going through something. Is I know it's scary and unknown, but don't be afraid to just stand there and be like, okay, where am I right now? What do I want to do? What are ways for me to action and move forward? Because for a long time there, I was happy with rugby and things like that, but I just wasn't happy. And I was like, I want to be happy. I want to be happy. And then I was engulfed in a lot of times wanting to be happy, but then not doing anything about it. But through actioning things, you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm actually happy because I'm actioning things.
Yeah.
It's like the weather. It's, sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's rainy, sometimes you're happy, sad or whatever, but you just continually move forward through actioning where your reality to your fantasy is, bridge that gap, and you'll be happy. And it's like, I think that's something that's really helped me this year. And for this year, I've probably had 4 or 5 days when I haven't been happy. Whereas the year before it was probably 4 or 5 days that I was happy.
Yeah.
All the other days I wasn't. So everyone goes through everything. you just connect really, because through that connection, like what we're doing, we're talking. And that's why I'm a big believer in therapy and things like that, because therapy is not just about them telling you what to do, it's about you saying things and then figuring things out in yourself.
Yeah.
Having that introspection and self-awareness. Think things through, figure them out for yourself, ask questions of yourself, but keep that Sam alive, keep that solutions, answers and meaning. I think that's a big one. And that's probably,
Mate, that is such powerful stuff, and it's so cool to hear you speak so honestly and openly and knowledgeably about the whole situations that you've been through and the ones that you're in, and so cool to be able to share it on this platform. But mate, I think you've made me a better coach, better person, and unfortunately a better player. Listening to that, too late for me now, but I'm sure so many people would have got a lot out of that. I think there's so much good in there, and like I said, looking forward to watching your career, knowing what you know now and seeing you implement it on the field in that test tube, like you like to call it. It's going to be cool to watch you and follow the journey a little bit closely.
No, cheers for having me, and like I said before, it's cool that a person of your talent is able to share a platform and help people, and that's at the end of the day, like telling stories and people connecting through that and helping through that. Like we're in us in club rooms right now, like I'm not allowed to do that, but like this is what rugby's about, mate.
Yeah.
Like, this is what the core fabric of New Zealand is about,
Yeah.
and this is what we just need to keep reminding and living, because the connections and talking and helping and working together, those are all the awesome qualities of that we have in rugby.
Yeah.
That we learn, and we don't want to lose that in rugby and post rugby, as you say, because post rugby presents another challenge.
Yeah.
But keep them going. So thanks for doing that and bringing me on. I probably mumbled a lot and didn't make sense, but hopefully a little bit of it made sense. And
Mate,
we're always learning.
Sense. All made sense.
Always
And you
trying to get
are an
better.
absolute lad, 52, Hugh. So appreciate you coming on, mate. It's been awesome.
Nah, cheers, Jimmy.
Geez, what an episode that was. Awesome to have Hugh come on and share some tips and tools from his journey. What an incredible journey he had. And if you got something out of that episode, let me know. Let me know in the comments. I will get back to everyone who does write something in there. So it'd be cool to hear what you got out of that episode. And if you're not already subscribed to the Waterlad YouTube channel, do so now, please. It does help massively. And appreciate all the support. Hope you enjoyed it.